We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz, and we will in a couple of minutes, along with Dorothy, the Tin Man, the producer, the director, and me. I'm Bruce Apar, and this is Frank Talks with Bruce the Blog. Well, as you can see, we have a full cast of people today, 5 guests, and I think that's why I'm so worked up. Not that I'm not usually worked up, but first housekeeping. Frank Talks with Bruce the Blog is brought to you by Chase Media Group, publisher of The Penny Saver and provider of multimedia marketing solutions for an omni-channel marketplace. You can also see all of our shows on YouTube by searching for Townlink TV or Bruce the Blog. If you type in Wizard of Oz, you might not see me, so that you have to type in Bruce the Blog or Townlink TV. But and we'd like to thank our CEO, Carla Chase, and my occasional co-host, Frank J. Rich, for bringing us to you, whether it's on cable or YouTube or any other way that you might be watching us. And we always like to bring you interesting people in the community who are making unique contributions and really helping to improve everybody's quality of life. And I'm really excited, as you may have noticed, about this show because, I mean, everybody's favorite movie is The Wizard of Oz, isn't it? I mean, that just goes without saying. I mean, you know, I know there's these stuff called The Godfather and Casablanca and Gone with the Wind, but The Wizard of Oz obviously holds a totally unique place in American culture, world culture, and in our hearts. And in our brains and other places too, which we'll get into. So let me first introduce all of our guests. From my left, it's always confusing when you're doing TV. It's my left, it's your right, it's whatever. Scarlett Antonia of Antonia Arts. Melodie Wolford, the director. Scarlett's the producer of The Wizard of Oz at the Paramount, January 16, 17, and 18.
You got it.
Melodie Wolford, who is a Broadway performer herself, is the director of this very interesting version, which we'll talk about. Gabrielle, but everybody knows her as Gabby Sansone, who is a 15-year-old rising star, who is the star as Dorothy of The Wizard of Oz. Scott Schuztman, who is the wizard, right? And Steve Zelichko, who is the Tin Man, right?
That's it.
So we're really happy, and seriously, we really appreciate all of you being here to talk about this great production that's going to be at the Paramount Hudson Valley Theater in January 16, 17, and 18 of L. Frank Baum's The Wizard of Oz. And we want to start by talking to Scarlett and about what she does with Antonia Arts, and that, for those of you who don't know, the connection that L. Frank Baum has to Peekskill, right? I mean, it's I think a lot of people may not be aware of how The Wizard of Oz, in some ways, actually, right, was inspired by his living in Peekskill.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, well,
Yes.
first, Scarlett, talk about Antonia Arts
Okay.
and what you do.
Antonia Arts is a not-for-profit, creative, and expressive performing arts organization. And we've been in existence for about 10 years and based out of Peekskill, and really, really happy to bring The Wizard of Oz to Peekskill. It's just such a match for us to do this. In the past, we've done Annie and Cats,
Right.
other productions. Also, Antonia Arts does have open mics. They have showcases.
Right.
There's a training program for young people coming up who are dedicated to the performing arts.
And you yourself, you used to be a dancer, right?
I
At ballet?
Yeah.
Right.
I started out 3 years old. I saw my first ballet, and I thought, that's it. I want to be a part of that. And that started me on my journey to Oz.
Right.
Yeah, and I started class at 7. I was a professional at 13, and touring nationally at 18.
Wow.
So I really made a career in dance, and then moved on to a little bit of everything in the performing arts.
Right.
From dancing to choreography to directing to managing. Administrative, and now I'm so happy to produce The Wizard of Oz.
Which is great, I know.
It's very exciting.
And also, didn't I read in your bio that you danced with Peter Gennaro, or
Yes,
right?
yeah,
I mean,
I
for people of my generation, baby boomers, Peter Gennaro was huge in terms of being really. A lot of people knew him on TV. I know, right? He choreographed TV shows, and
A lot.
he was a very familiar presence and a very big influence, right, in dance and choreography.
Very, very
Yeah.
strong, and he was an amazing man to work with.
Yeah.
He really captured me, and I had an incredible experience with him. I was the youngest in the group, and he kind of took me in as his
That's great.
as
Wow.
his baby.
No,
Yeah,
that's
it
really
was
great.
wonderful.
Yeah. And Melodie, we want to move down the line first and have everybody meet all of you individually, and then we can talk about other things about The Wizard of Oz. But Melodie, you've certainly been around a lot on Broadway and TV and done, right?
Yeah, I'm
Almost everything with show business.
Well, I'm a singer and a dancer and an actress.
Yeah.
I moved to New York from Mississippi, and very quickly I got in the national tour of 42nd Street with Barry Nelson
Wow, that's
and
great.
Dolores Gray. That's how I got my equity card.
Wow.
Yeah, and I moved on, and I kept doing more and more, and it looked like almost I was at a final callback with Kristen Chenoweth. And then I took some time off to have my son and got back in the business. But now I'm directing and choreographing a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how I met Scarlett is I played the mean Miss Hannigan in Annie.
Right, and Annie, I remember that. You were great.
And
I
she
remember
was
that.
my-
and
she was
and
my
of course,
Annie.
Gabby was Annie. Yeah.
And
Right.
that's how I met her, and then she needed a director, and we talked about it, and I couldn't be more thrilled that I'm directing this amazing production with these amazing people.
Yeah, no. And by the way, I'm an entertainment groupie or showbiz groupie, so that's why when I have people on the show who are in entertainment and I read their bios, there are certain things that jump out at me that I love to point out. And in your case, for example, one of them is that you were in La Cage aux Folles with Larry Kurt. And for people who don't know, tell them who Larry Kurt is. He holds a place
Larry
in
Kurt-
Broadway musical history.
Yes, Larry Kurt was the original Tony in West Side
That
Story.
yeah.
Larry Kurt was remarkable, and basically I went to La Cage thinking there wouldn't be anything for me, and Arthur Lawrence was at the audition, which never happens anymore, and my hair was up and was falling down, and he just loved me for some reason, Mr. Lawrence, thank God, and he cast me in La Cage aux Folles, and not only was Larry Kurt and Harvey Evans the most amazing performers, it was the most amazing group of people. I met my best girlfriend in the world, and I met my husband, who was on the crew, Bill Craven. It was an experience not to be believed, and getting to work with the great Arthur Lawrence.
And speaking of Arthur Lawrence, who wrote the book for West Side
Yes.
Story and for Gypsy, which, by the way, I'll plug, is coming to Yorktown Stage in April 2015. But speaking of West Side Story, Melodie, I also know on your resume you performed with Chita Rivera, another West Side Story
Yes,
original.
that was interesting.
Yeah.
I was her understudy, and she looked at me the first day of rehearsal, and she was like, "You're my understudy?" You know, I mean, nobody can understudy Chita Rivera. But it was at Paper Mill Playhouse. It was Anything Goes,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was lucky to get to understudy the great Chita Rivera.
Wow, yeah. Okay, we're going to come back to Gabby because we have a little special presentation we're going to make. But just, I want to go, we'll go to you, Steve Zelichko.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having us.
No, of course, thanks for being here. So you're the Tin Man, but first I want to talk about, I see that you've done TV and film. I guess you've done more of that, Stephen, right? And then you say this is the first time in 4 years you're on stage, right?
Yes, I started out musical theater in high school, and I fell in love with it. And just where my career took me, I just started on the film and TV route, and I've had some very good success, but it was time to come back to stage, come back to my roots. And if you want to work with anybody, I mean, these are the people to work with. They just have such a love and passion
Yep.
for theater, for quality work, and it's just one of those things. There's nothing like being on a live stage, and giving it all. So this has been very exciting and a fantastic opportunity, which I can't thank everybody enough for.
Now, when you auditioned, did you audition specifically for the Tin Man, or?
I did. I'm not much of a dancer.
Okay.
And so I said, well, the Tin Man is actually the opposite of the dancer.
Right.
So I said, I think I could do that. I can muster this.
And he's incredibly charming.
Yes, I could see that already. Right.
Yes.
But I think there's just certain roles that obviously one connects more quickly to than others, and for me, the Tin Man is the guy that is your best friend, that you look for in a best friend. He's the most tender, most caring person that will take off an arm or a leg or put you back together.
Right.
And to be able to embody that is really an honor.
And one thing he won't do is bolt, right? Anyhow.
Well, I hope not. I am ready.
Okay, now Scott Schuztman.
Yes.
Who is the wizard, which of course is a great role. So talk about your background. I mean, I know what it is because I read it. I was tickled when I saw that role you had quite a long time ago when you were a little smaller.
Yeah.
But why don't you just tell people about that?
I think what you're talking about is when I was 14, I was cast as the young Robert De Niro in the gangster epic Once Upon a Time in America, which was about Jewish gangsters, and it was directed by Sergio Leone, who had directed all these spaghetti westerns with Clint Eastwood, and it was a life-changing experience to get that part in that movie. I had been acting at that point, though, since I was about 8, since I did my first play. I think it was in 2nd grade, and fell in love with acting immediately. And this is actually my first experience in a musical, and I'm very excited. I've been taking singing lessons for about a year, and really wanted to get into a musical, and so. My first musical, I don't have anything to sing, so that's kind of, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I think the first show I ever saw was 1975, was the Magic Show with Doug Henning.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
And then dancing, and then the original production of Sweeney Todd when I was 12.
Yeah.
So I've been going to Broadway, but like you, my early stuff was film, and had a pretty extensive film career for a while, and then changes happened in life, and I left for a while. Sometimes they say it's good to leave for a while and come back.
Yeah.
So I have another career, and now I'm working my way back into this, and I'm just having the time of my life. It is amazing, and I never dreamed that in Peekskill, New York, I would find this level of talent, because I grew up in the city, going to Broadway and kind of getting spoiled with the top. So, and Melodie as a director is so focused, so passionate, so wise as to what makes a show pop and come alive. So she's really a big reason that I'm here, and of course Scarlett putting this whole together. So.
Well, and also there's nothing like a director who's a performer as well. They understand everything, obviously, firsthand. And Gabrielle Sansone, who it's like, I'm going to be one of those obnoxious people who go, I've known you since you were this age. But it's true, right?
Yes.
Especially your mom and your great family. And so you're starring as Dorothy, and starring in musicals is nothing really new to you, is it, Gabby? Even though you're still at a somewhat tender age, right?
Yes.
I mean, you were in Annie
Okay.
with Melodie, and that Antonia Arts did, and this isn't. I think you told me this is like one of your dream roles, obviously.
Oh,
yeah. So how's it going so far?
It's actually phenomenal. We have such an amazing cast, and of course Mel is an amazing director. And I mean, I'm really stressing the amazing cast part, because I feel like what a lot of people don't understand is that it's not just about the leads in the show being phenomenal performers. If the whole cast is together and if they're a family and if they know each other and they all have good energy, it's really the whole cast that makes the show, not just one phenomenal performer.
Oh no, absolutely. And now something that really applies to everybody, but maybe more even Gabby and Stephen, who are a little younger than the rest of us. How affected or influenced would you say you are by the movie? Because again, it's arguably the most iconic movie there is, with the performances and the performers in it. And so I know as a performer, there's always that battle when you're doing a role. If it's a famous role, do I want to really look at the movie version, even though you may have seen it before, and you don't want to be
I will. I'm
unduly
going to jump in
affected?
just for a second. I will be honest. When I was little, I think I only saw it like once, and then when Scarlett asked me to direct it, I decided to only watch it one time because I hadn't seen it in years.
Right.
And then I haven't watched it since. So for me,
right.
I wanted to, because I wanted our show to be different.
Right.
So I don't know about for you guys as young people.
Right. I mean, in the case of it was Jack Haley was the Tin Man, and of course the Wizard was
Frank Morgan.
Frank Morgan, who was also. I mean, are they in your heads at all, or?
Well, at least for me personally, I love The Wizard of Oz. It is very near and dear to my heart. I mean, it is, like you said, well, right now, I'm not in character. Thank goodness.
And I thought you didn't get that yet.
After January 18th.
Right,
Just a little longer.
It's a little longer.
Your New Year's present. Your resolution.
It's a new year.
Getting a heart.
New year, new heart. But, it's one of those things where, because it's so iconic, and it's so close to everyone's hearts, pun intended, I can't look at it because if I am going to be, true to myself, true to my craft, I have to recreate with the same foundation and make my own interpretation that's true to me, it's mine, which lets me connect to everyone else because I'm not acting. This is me, putting my heart on the stage.
Right. Yes.
So for me, that's how I have to approach it.
Right.
I mean, I've seen it 50, 100 times. In fact, since I've been doing the show, I've remembered some things that I had forgotten. And one of the things that I remembered is that I actually bought the cast album, I don't know, maybe I was 10 or 11, and I also had the poster, the original poster with them.
Yeah.
And I've watched it recently, and I've watched Frank Morgan's performance, and I allow myself to be somewhat influenced by what Frank did, just as sort of like a base. And then as rehearsals have been going on, totally discovering new things of my own.
Right.
So it's kind of a little bit of
Which is part of
vestige.
part of the acting process. And Gabby, you've been compared vocally to Judy Garland, who, I mean, for people like me, she's just it. It's in fact, her Judy at Carnegie Hall album I played more times since I was a little kid than anything. But again, how does she like sort of loom above you somehow? And
I mean, there definitely, I do have some influence by Judy. I feel very similar in my performance to her, but at the same time, just as Scott and Steven said, I've found that it's more about me. I have to find the things that make all these difficulties and obstacles and her journeys that she goes through true to myself.
Right.
Otherwise, it wouldn't come across, true.
Right.
On the
Yeah.
stage.
It would be too artificial.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So now what we want to do is just take a couple of minutes and, in fact, treat everybody in the audience to something very special, which is hearing Gabby sing the signature song from The Wizard of Oz, which of course is Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So let's hear that now, everybody. Richard.
When all the world is a hopeless jumble and the raindrops tumble all around,
Heaven opens a magic lane. When all the clouds darken up the skyway, there's a rainbow highway to be found, leading from your window pane to a place behind the sun, just a step beyond the rain. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why, then oh why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh why can't I?
All right. Great job, Gabby. Right. And Melody, I wanted to also ask you. I know that you have some very strong personal connections to this show and to other roles you played, like Miss Hannigan and Annie. And if you want to talk about that,
Sure.
How that shapes what you're doing with the show and the interpretation.
Sure. Well, meeting you when we first talked, when you interviewed me when I was Hannigan,
Yeah.
I was raised in a children's home, in the Illinois Masonic Children's Home. And I had a house parent who was very tough on me.
Yeah.
And so it was hard to play Miss Hannigan. It was very difficult for me. And yes, it is emotional watching Gabby and hearing her sing and her journey, because she's a bit of an orphan and I'm a bit of an orphan. So that is the connection there.
Right.
However, now that I'm really in it, a lot of that is pushed aside because I have, like I said, I have different thoughts about the show. We're doing some different things. I don't want to give too much away. We've got this cast of 37 people, and so I've moved past that. But that was one reason why I think I wanted to do it.
And we should also let people know, speaking of the cast of 37, that it's obviously local people, right? There's a lot of local people.
Oh, a lot of local people.
Yeah.
Really talented people. We have 10 Munchkins. And one thing I would like to say about Scarlett, her work with the Peekskill community and the children, a lot of them that are underserved, underprivileged, Scarlett does so much for them and with them, and they adore her. What I am hoping, because the Yellow Brick Road is in Peekskill, Frank was from Peekskill, is that everybody's going to come out, especially the powers that be, and see this magnificent show and say, why don't we make this an annual event?
I mean, the Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
Is that wow?
I think that
Right,
would be,
right,
it might not
right.
happen, but I think that would be spectacular.
Yeah.
But at least see what Scarlett is doing with these young children.
Right.
And changing their lives. And I only know, I mean, the Masons saved my life, and in a certain way, Antonia Arts is saving some other lives.
Yeah.
Very important. So.
No, I totally agree with you. And Scarlett, we mentioned at the outset of the show the connection L. Frank Baum has to Peekskill. So why don't you just talk more about that? I mean, even to the extent, I know some people may be a little skeptical of this, but there are yellow bricks somewhere in Peekskill, and that's where he got the concept for the Yellow Brick Road?
There are. The thing about starting with the show, I just felt I wanted to do the show. I needed to do the show. I knew Gabby was Dorothy. And that's how that's how the whole thing started.
Pre-casting.
She was Judy Garland coming back or whatever. And that's how it all started.
Yeah.
And I got into it just as actors get into their roles,
Yeah.
studying and learning a little bit more about the show, a little bit about Frank, who had done the original writing, and found out that he went to military academy here for 2 years in Peekskill. He was a creative, and can you imagine a creative going to military academy? It was challenging.
Right.
It was challenging.
A little yin and yang going on there, right?
Yeah. But and he wasn't well. He wasn't real healthy. So it was not a good match for him. And so he only lasted a couple of years. But he did go to Peekskill Military Academy, and he did contribute his books to the academy down the road. So he was empowered by it, and it really made an impact on his life.
And you said you said the site of the theater is, right, and some material that I read is,
yeah.
The site, but the theater's been there, wow, I think it's 70 or 80 years old now. There's an anniversary coming up. In fact,
right,
yeah.
Paramount.
Yeah.
The Military Academy actually was on the site where the administration building is now. There's a theater there, the Ford Theater.
Oh.
And that was where the Military
next
Academy,
door to it, right? Is that what you mean, next door?
across
Yeah.
from the high school. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
the high school, yeah.
And
right.
the other thing that's interesting, the Colonial Theater does not exist anymore. But in 1905, they did the production of The Wizard of Oz. It was not a musical at that time.
Oh.
And Frank brought it here from New York. It was sold out in New York, and people came to see it here and loved it.
Right.
And that was in 1905.
Right.
And so Peekskills played a big part. And the other issue that we're talking about are the yellow bricks.
Right, yes.
And did they inspire him? Did they? I mean, we're going to
Well.
leave that up. You can look out the window and say, I don't know if I want to be studying right now. Those yellow bricks are kind of,
Right.
kind of fun.
But there are yellow bricks in Peekskill.
There are absolutely
Right,
yellow bricks.
so it's hard
near the
not
train
to it's hard
station.
not to imagine there's some connection there. He lived here, there were yellow bricks
Well, I had
here.
heard through the
to
grapevine
walk on 'em.
that the people used to always say, just follow the yellow brick road because the water would rise above or something. And how do I get to town? And people say, just follow because the water wouldn't go over the yellow bricks. If you follow the yellow brick, you'll find
Oh,
the town.
interesting. Oh,
That's
okay.
what I heard.
I had heard, and I thought that that there were some yellow bricks actually at the military academy. That's what I thought.
Oh.
That there were yellow bricks at the military academy. So if this guy's at this military academy, he's creative and he's dreaming of getting out. A yellow brick road.
Oh,
leads
that's
you
interesting.
somewhere
Wow.
better,
I like that
Yeah.
story.
That's a
which
great
is what happens here.
That's a great interpretation.
Yeah.
Follow the yellow bird out of this military academy. Get me out of here.
Not that a military academy is bad, but it just
not.
as a creative
Yeah.
an artist,
Oh, no,
you want to
actually-
go beyond it. And he was
Right.
such a creative, so
Right.
creative.
But however, you know, as all of you certainly know, as creative artists, you need discipline, and that's certainly what you get at a military academy. So, but as I said to you before we went on, it seems like the show goes by in 5 minutes, and now we have about 1 minute left. So I just want to thank everybody. You can buy tickets at the Paramount Hudson Valley Theater, right, at their website,
Absolutely.
and I hear that the sales are going pretty well, so you better get tickets fast if you want to see the show.
Yes.
And I want to thank our guests. This has been a great show. Scarlett Antonia of Antonia Arts, Melodie Wolford, the director of Wizard of Oz, Scarlett is the producer, Gabrielle Sansone as Dorothy, Scott Schuztman as the Wizard, and Stephen Zelichko as the Tin Man. Thank you all very much, and break a leg. And thank you for watching Frank Talks with Bruce the Blog. And remember, when Bruce the Blog listens, people talk. Thank you. Rough to see a wizard, a wonderful wizard. I'm going to go find myself some yellow.
When all the world is a hopeless jumble and the raindrops tumble all around, heaven opens a magic lane. When all the clouds darken up the skyway, there's a rainbow highway to be found, leading from your window pane to to a place behind the sun, just a step beyond the rain. Somewhere